So welcome to what should hopefully be the first of many of these videos. My name is Roo, hence reviews at the start. I'm a visual effects artist. I've been working in the industry for several years now. I'm currently working at Framestore as a VFX modeler for film. Some of the films I worked on at the side there. So I've managed to get to this position not just through the learning that I've done, but through the help and advice of industry professionals through various events, talks, lots of social networking that have helped me get to this level. So what I'd like to try and do is use what I've learned to try and feed back to the general community and give, rather than just overall advice, I'd like to give more tailored advice. So we're going to be doing that by going through showreels and portfolios, and we'll review these as the same way that work gets reviewed at in a VFX house. So sometimes it can come across a little bit harsh or picky. I have nothing but respect for these artists. It's a massive step for them to allow me to publicly share their work. It can be very hard for a starting artist to have their things exposed and critiqued, but it is vital. It's one of the most important things is to have somebody you don't know look at your work and help you progress, because you get trapped into looking at it inside the bubble of your bedroom or wherever it is that you're working, and it can very much slow down your progression. And when you have work in a VFX house or a game studio, wherever, your work will be reviewed several times a day and it will be critiqued in the same manner. So it's not that I'm trying to be horrible or nasty or anything like that, it's just I'm trying to give an honest feedback to help people prepare for what they need to do in order to succeed in this industry. We're going to begin these with two artists I've come to know. One which is fairly new to me is Quinn Thompson. I've not had much time to get to know him, but from what I've seen, he's a really friendly guy. He's got great work, so we'll be reviewing his work first. And secondly, we'll be having a look at Ross Baxter. He's somebody I've got to know fairly well recently. He runs his own podcast. He's a great artist, and he's on a similar mission as me, as in trying to help students break into the industry and further their careers. So we're going to begin today by having a look at Quin Thompson's reel here. So he's a 3D modeler and artist. He got in touch with me through LinkedIn for the talk I was at. I've had a chance to look at his work. It's very impressive. So we'll go through it today and we'll just see what areas he could improve on, or things that need to be edited in order for him to be able to go from having a student reel to having a reel that will get him into a proper effects house. So we'll just go through and play this here. Okay, so first thing overall here, this is a nice looking layout. I'm not much of a textured artist, but I mean these look a wee bit fluffy. I think there's just too much of a high frequency bump in there, but otherwise very nice looking. The leaves are nicely laid out. I would imagine some kind of simulation rather than array, because it looks like there's a bit of interaction, so that immediately is nice to see that he's capable of doing a bunch of different things. However, the background here, there's just something completely off about it. There seems to be quite a strong key light coming in from here, which you can see casting down onto the object, whereas the key light in the background seems to be over here. So that doesn't match up, and it looks a lot softer. It would appear like the ground level, it almost looks like there's a step down. So I suppose maybe it's a display in a shop or something, but overall that would be my first impression. But if it was coming in as a modeler, so far there's nothing wrong here. It's nice to see these references images in here. When we're actually creating things in the studio, we have to add reference alongside our images, because we also need to be able to sell to our boss why we've done something if we're working off a concept. The only thing I would say is, rather than having these in a separate slide, have them at the side, or have them of your main render, and then have these kind of fade in afterwards, because these are great to see, but then I need to skip back in the video to be able to actually review them compared to the model that's been made. Which, if we've only got 30 seconds to look at your reel, we're not going to do that, and it'd be a shame for you to miss out on an opportunity because of something so simple. It's nice to see the maps up the side there. This would be really good for a generalist reel. It's nice to see along the bottom the software you've used as well. Okay, so this would be the main bit that would get looked at, because this will be telling us the way that you're able to work. There are quite a few issues that we can see here. So first of all, if this was for a games model, okay, this would be okay. probably could reduce that down a little bit further if you're going to bring it into a game. You could have some nice maps on there. I'm going to talk about this from the other side of an effects house where we do films and things like that. Now, the immediate thing that stands out to me is you should have, as much as possible, like an even layout of topology. You should have even loops, even spacing. There's these massive gaps here. So even though an object might be static, we should always model it to the same level just in case something needs to be done to it, if it needs to be damaged or anything like that. So we need to have, what I'll do is let me just draw a window in here. So we will be looking much more at having kind of several spans, just evening that out all the way across, if you get the idea there. And now there is something super funky going on up in here. I'm not entirely sure what it is because it's kind of hard to see with just a close render like this, but definitely there's going to be some problems there when it comes to the smoothing of the mesh. When it comes to texturing, there'll be some stretching, and down here as well. This should be flowing just across the mesh. You shouldn't have these things intercepting here. I know it was probably to try and keep an equal amount of loops here so as not to break the edge, but it would be much wiser just to add more detail in overall to bring this up to full quality. Then if you need to bring the poly count down, do it with maps afterwards. But this that would be very problematic for us. It's also going to make it harder to UV for cutting down your loops. There's something similar in here. So you've got this edge is coming all the way up. It would be much wiser. So in here you've got your corner here, and this is coming up. Now you'd want that one to come across. Then you would have, so you got in here, you need to have your strengthening loops to hold that edge. So you'd have that one in there and there. But you bring these over and across, and you would have this kind of radiate out, and then maybe have a line up in here. And this is when you would start to figure about cutting this out. You don't want to have this near an edge. If you have this right on the edge, this is going to cause really weird smoothing issues, and down the line that's going to cause a lot more problems, which would be really easy to fix in the short term. Overall though, a really nice model. If you're going to be applying for any kind of modeling job, a wireframe is vital. If you don't have it in your reel, it doesn't matter how nice everything else is, you will not get the job. It is the most important thing for us. Getting a really nice tree here, nice textures. Nice to see the wireframe breakdown. So let's just jump back down. Now, this is quite quick. It could be that the reel would definitely benefit from having just slowed down a wee bit. Doesn't have to be a much, maybe just half speed. But what we can immediately see here is a really nice clean sculpt. There's a lot of high level detail, so this to me would say that he's got quite good knowledge of bringing displacement maps. I'd imagine probably Zbrush. It doesn't have that mudbox feel to it. The bow tie is quite a fun wee thing. It's immediately selling to me. There's some story here. Gives the creature a bit of character rather than just being a cool sci-fi bug that somebody sculpted. So I have to play and pause this here again with the reference. Really nice to see. It's great to see that they're drawn from reality. It's really important to be able to sell something you're making, to have a point anchored in something where people will understand. But again, it would be good to see this beside the actual model, because out of context here it's kind of difficult to judge. This is nice to see the turntable here. You see quite nice breakups on it. The only immediate thing that's standing out to me is there seems to be a very uniform specular highlight on it. I mean, that'd be a really nice way to quickly break this up, is you've got this nice color map in here. Just put it in Photoshop, change levels, use it as a specular map, or on multiply or something, just to break it up, just to add a little bit of difference to show some different texture. As it stands, it looks like a plastic bug, and this I don't know if it needs a little bit of transparency or some subsurface, but it stands out a lot. Maybe that's a design feature, I don't know. This would be something we would discuss at the point of time of speaking to the artist when he was describing the piece in more detail. I believe these are meant to be hair. It's not been entirely successful, but at least it gives us the feeling. If the artist here was going to be going towards some kind of groom role, this would need to be greatly improved, but for a generalist, this looks fantastic. It's always nice to see the UV breakdowns. We normally have these in a separate layer in our renders, so we can switch between and figure out that everything's working and is okay. The only thing that's immediately standing out to me here that would be pretty much vital for modern studios is there's a different density. As you can see, the squares in the UV checker map here, they're different sizes. So if you've got a material in here, it's maybe a procedural material, if you apply this to the mesh, it's going to have different effects in different places, which is very undesirable. You would want to have these all uniform. I'd imagine this has probably been done so as to maximize UV map space, but it's much more important to have uniform scale and everything rather than having it different sizes for that. There are some small exceptions to that. Would be something like in a character, you'd probably have a lot more density in its face if it was going to have some close-ups, but again, this is shot dependent. As an overall rule, you should keep things uniform. So it's an interesting model here. It's nice and clean. It's always good to see a clay render. What would immediately, my first thing when I was looking at this after seeing the previous pieces, is my eyes are going to be drawn to these, because these look like they've actually been cut into the mesh with the modeling. And having seen some of the way the edge loops are made in the previous model, this would be an area of concern for me to check out to see perhaps if this is a newer piece, the artist has improved their skills or moved on. So we'll see if there's a wireframe here. Okay, there is. It's quite hard to read, just because of the thickness of the lines in comparison to their density. And what we can see up there, let me just start a new window here. So as we can see here, this, I like the way this is cut in here, that's nice. Let me just get a slightly brighter color here. Just highlight this in here. So the way these are cut in is very nice, but there's definitely way too much density going on in here. So we have the same issue down here. There seems to be a really high density going on in this section. Now it's quite unjustified for such a small indentation. Again, for something like that, I'd probably just go with the displacement map, unless you're going to be getting up really close to this object. And as before, you can see, drag this out of the way. There's quite a difference in the density. So you've got lots of loops in here, and then you've got these wide spacings, you've got these big gaps up in here. It's just, generally it should have a uniform density across the entire model. It looks like a generally nice clean model. There's good topology flow. It breaks up here nice. Being picky, I would definitely change the way this matches in. This loop coming across here is fine. You could bring this loop up to there, that one to there. I'd probably bring another one across here to match, because you'll have some texture stretching up in this area if you don't. Again, up at the top, the same idea, because you've got this very small polygon which then stretches into this very large one, which will cause some texturing issues. Let's keep going here. This looks much nicer. It looks like a uniform density. I'm not seeing any bits that particularly stand out to me as being completely different. It's kind of interesting to have it in this general enclosure, focuses the eye in. A small thing, but that could be something that just makes your reel stand out. I mean, we only have a very small amount of time to look at each of these reels, so anything you can do to stand out is very important. It's nice to have some more detailed shots. You can see clearly a lot of work has been put into this area. It's a shame that doesn't really show up on the wireframe. I'd be very curious to see how these have been cut in. You've got your double round edges coming into a sharp corner. That can be a very hard situation to model well. So I'd really like to see that, especially the screws here. I worry that these have got a lot of triangles going on just from what I've seen so far. So that would be something probably, if we were to get through to an interview stage, I would want to review and properly check and see. But I mean, it looks pretty clean otherwise. So there's a nice cut in here. I can see that you've managed to get this in without distorting the general curvature of the shape. Only thing that's bugging me here, it looks like there's a small gap here and here where these things don't align, but that just may be part of the design. again, something to discuss on the actual day. Oh, now see, I don't watch through these beforehand, just to make sure that what I'm seeing is fresh and I'm not overthinking, and I treat these in exactly the same way as we would in the office when we review a portfolio. So I take back what I said about the wireframe is in here, so that's good to see. Screws are a little bit too dense for me to be able to tell, but I'm going to guess from the density in here what I was saying about the triangles is correct, so that would need to be addressed. The wireframe in here is a little weird. I would probably have another loop on the inside and one on the outside, just to allow some room for this to stretch and flex. It's just general topology workflow here. There's a lot of loops which are coming to nowhere. There should be nice flowing across the model, so that when things are smooth and subdivided, they just go in there. I can't see it properly, but I know that that's not going to work right for what we would need. But this is an easy thing to learn. We're looking at an overall here, and overall it's a good looking model, nice and clean here. This is much better the way rather than these loops just coming to a point here, how they're coming and they're nicely flowing around. These ones are coming around into this. They're part of the structure. It's not that they just put in loops just to make things work. It looks thought through and it's planned. Especially this coming around here, looping, keeping nice and smooth. This is nice to see. Okay, so that was great to have a look over there. What we'll do now is we'll jump into I use Modo personally for all my modeling. It's not something that you need Modo to understand, but I'm going to go through and give a couple of examples of things from that we can quickly learn from, and just a few tips and techniques that you can use to improve yourself. With the first example here, I've created a very rough version of what we saw in that first one there, when there was that I was talking about the loops that were coming up, which should have been terminated nicely to the side. This is a rough recreation of it. I can't imagine exactly off the top of my head. I believe there might have been an extra loop in there. So what you could do is you can make this a lot neater, a lot tidier, and overall just improve your model. So what you want to do is when you're cleaning up, don't be scared of deleting loops. It's easy enough to add them back in. What you can do is if you're working on one, you can just delete parts of it that you need before deleting the rest of it. So if this continued on, you would still have all those connections there. And when you're getting to the tidying up stage, it's very useful to clean out all the things you don't need. So I can see this thing here, this is straight line, so this is currently, it will support things when they're subdivided and smoothed, but it's not going to do anything for us just now, so we'll just get rid of those. So we're going to start having a look at this here. So I'm going to want to bring this one over to here, so we're going to bring this onto this point, and I would probably want to bring this one down into here and this one down into here. Let's go ahead and clear some of these out. Okay, so now if we can join these up together, we'll bring a loop up to here. We can get rid of this one. So if we just slide these in here, I'd probably get rid of that one. What we've got here is a nice control over the edge. This will continue our flow around, so we can add one more in there, and for here we'd want to just cut one in. It's worth taking just a little bit of time just to make sure that you've got these things right, because it will save you a lot of hassle in the future. Jumping back and forward between smoothing can be a really nice way to just quickly check that everything's attached, that you've not got any unwelded vertices. Sorry, look there. Yeah, so you know, this is much smoother, because then if you want to work on this later on, we can just add loops in as we see fit. We can easily select rings that go around about here. Now you could, if you wanted, if you want to make this just a little tidier, we could add in just two more in here. This will hold the shape a lot better. This is the more dense option, so if you're trying to keep things low, that first one before would be the way to go. And for here we'd add some density. Now what I was saying with the loops, we would want to try and perhaps probably add two in there we would need, and then we would have three in this one, and that would just give us a nice uniform spacing. We need to give this a little bit of tidying up just to just to get that flow nice. And that would be a much better way to do that handle on the chainsaw there. That's for our first example there. So now something to think about as well is when you're doing this, check all your views. I've got some weird kind of movement in here, so just scale it flat, you're absolutely fine, you're good to go. So for our second one, we'll just close this one off. It was the blade in the chainsaw. Maybe we're talking about the density for using it for whatever it is that your project might require. So let's start with this and bring him in. Now, just delete off that half that we don't need. We're going to scale that out, stepping it to that point. So it's just where we've got a nice uniform even quads. And we're going to just mirror that over and we'll do a bridge. So very roughly this was the shape of that chainsaw blade. I think there's maybe 3 loops that were in there. I'll just stretch that out a bit further. Yeah, something like that, 3 loops that were in there, so massive differences in the density. Now what I'm going to do is just copy this up above here, just to show you what the difference would be. So I'll probably have 3 nice uniform loops in there, so we've got a fairly even density. So on this one, if I bend this mesh, just get the correct axis there, what you'll see is, you see from the above view there, it's very faceted, so you get quite an even bend. So if you were building this and you had some screw holes in it, you would have this flat surface. So for instance, if I was to go in and say we're adding in a screw hole in here, I'm doing this very, very roughly just for the example, this is going to cause this really weird kink, because you just don't have enough density in there. Whereas with this other option here, if I was to go in and bend that mesh in the same way, just get that axis correct, and this is going to give us a nice smooth mesh. You can already see up above the difference. If we needed to work on this, we'd be very easy to add any extra details in we want there. So it's really worth just putting this in, because later on, if you need to go back and edit this model, or if it needs to be destroyed, or if it's simply just a case of you want to pose it for a different scene, this will take you 2 seconds when you're modeling and will vastly improve the look of your models, your wireframes, and also the model's usability, which is really important when you're in a studio. So for our second artist today, we're going to have a look at Ross Baxter here. I've had the pleasure of speaking with him before. As it turns out, we're from the same city, so I do have quite a bias towards him. He has a fantastic podcast, which I'll link below in the description, where he helps students kind of listen to and connect with industry experts to help them just kind of explore and expand their careers. So we're going to have a look at his portfolio today. And you probably recognize this piece on the left here. It's been quite heavily featured. I've seen it in just about every 3D site I've been onto, not just posted by him, but also shared by other great artists. So it's a fantastic sign that he's definitely on the correct road here. Now my first immediate thought, when we open up your ArtStation, it's just like a quick overall appearance. Now this top here, it's just me being picky, but personally I would have something in here. You're an artist for life, so you know everything should have some kind of art aesthetic. And just from knowing what pieces of work he's got in here, you should always rank your work from highest to lowest. And if you've got something in there which you're not happy with, you should just completely remove. So just from knowing the work that he's done before, I would move this Martian one in front of the chairs, just because these are his two, what I would say are his strongest pieces, and should showcase them first. So first of all, we're going to go into this parallel words here. So it's a lovely render here. The only thing that immediately stands out to me is it's a bit noisy, but it's got that kind of feeling of maybe a sunset or dusk or something like that, just nice atmospheric. So that's just choice of the artist, there's nothing wrong in it at all. But this is what I love. It's really nice to see just a clean clay wireframe A big problem we have is in a lot of people when they first start applying, they'll show things with a lot of textures on them, and I don't think there's anything here we can use as a good example. Perhaps in here where you've got this nice strong highlight, it can make it hard for us to read and understand the models. What you've got to think about is, I know you've worked on it for ages and you know it inside and out, but we don't, and we need to buy that model within the first 5 seconds. It needs to be something that connects with us. And if we can't see that model because of some cool texture you put on there, well, that's really is a shame that that work's been wasted like that. So like a nice clay render like this is really handy. It's a nice uniform lighting as well, so there's not many areas which are deeply trapped in shadows, so we're not losing anything. And there's a nice touch which I'm a massive fan of myself in clay renders. Just left the kind of lights in here just to add, it's a little point of interest. It's not going to cause too much extra render time, it's not confusing the model, it's just a really nice little touch. As you can see here, this was one of the awards that he got for posting it up here. The only thing here is there is no wireframe. For this to be perfect, be this render, clay render, then wireframe. It's nice to see these awards, it's good to see all the contact details in here, but from a modeling point of view, I'm not going to be able to probably recommend this as a candidate for a modeling job without a wireframe. And the modeling looks good. From having seen some of his other stuff, I know that he is a good modeler, so it's not a problem. It's just simply for somebody who doesn't know you, without a wireframe, you're not in good standing. So really easy to just quickly add that, and you can add it into this project. You don't need to start again. So any kind of social media or sharing that you've already done, you can still add to. You don't have to start again. So I'm going to have a look at the second piece here, the Martian. I know it's not the order that the actual art station's in, but I feel this is a stronger piece, so in fairness to his art, I'd like to go over this one first. Now, immediately when I look at this, I'm not sure why, but this is selling to me that there's going to be a story here. I almost imagine this is going to start moving like the opening intro to a game. It's a nice, simple, clean writing. It's not blocking anything. You've got a nice layout. There's just something about a big open space like this with this central light. It's just bringing your point of interest there, like something's going to happen. So clearly this is more of a kind of a game level type thing. I say that only because I can see quite a lot of sharp edges here. It's looking just this faceting here as well. There's nothing wrong with it if you're going for a game level thing, that's fine. Just generally for me, I model for film, so I'm always looking for more high res stuff, but I can still appreciate the games thing here. It can be one of the hardest things to get correctly, is where and where not to use topology density. So if you can get good at that, you're laughing. It's nice overall texture and it's nice lighting. So yeah, there's nothing really more there to comment on. Again, another nice shot here. I think it's just a shot development. Again, a nice overall feel of the room. Perhaps there's just a little bit too much repetition, but if it's for some kind of functional space pod, there's not going to be a huge amount of variation. It could just be small, simple things like they've got your pots or cups in here. You know, they're all identical. Maybe just rotate one, tip one slightly. Simple thing. It's not really going to make any difference, but it would just overall give the piece just something a bit more lived-in feeling. Again, another nice shots here. We're getting a real feeling that this is going to be perhaps a central point of this room. This is going to be where the action's going to happen, so it's nice that there's a focused lighting on there. The only thing I would probably do if I was working on it myself is, rather than just having this one key light shining on here, I'd perhaps have 8, maybe 10 in a circle up above, not as strong, just to give this a circular lighting feel, just to make sure that we know that this is exactly the central point. It's nice with the lighting here. It's nice to see where your light sources are. The only thing would be that this is perhaps, to me, it looks like these lights are slightly overexposed for the effect that they're having on the environment. But again, that could just be down to the render engine, or it could be a creative choice, I'm not entirely sure. It's nice to see these with the screen here. I am curious as to what's going on in the roof here. There's kind of a large void, but again, this could be something to be discussed at the point of an interview. This is good with the clay models here. It's slightly difficult to read in these areas with the with a very bright light. It's very contrasty and blown out, but it's nothing too difficult. I can see it looks fairly clean along here. There's nice repetition. These can be simple things. If they're not on points of interest, you can add in repetition just to fill that space. Okay, so here we go. So this is the stuff that's of interest to me. So overall, it looks like it's quite a low density model, so I would definitely go with this being for more of a game rather than an effects environment. There's nothing obviously standing out here. It all looks fairly nice. For me, this polar point here, when you've got all these different vertices coming together, I would probably avoid that as much as I can. We'll do a quick look after this at ways which you can avoid that and perhaps keep the same level of detail. There's some very easy tricks you can do, and there's nothing that says as well that all your meshes have to be connected. If you're just going to render these out nicely, you can easily add on like a rounded edge shader, some kind of ambient occlusion in there, which will give you that feeling without having to model it in. If you can do it an easier way that still works, there's no point in making your life more difficult than it needs to be. In here, for me, this needs a lot of love. I know that it's probably for the game res level things, but it's just this is just really unpleasant to look at just from a wireframe point of view. What would probably be more sensible to do, I can see why he's done it. He's trying to keep these edge loops that are continuing into the circle. That's perfectly fine if it's going to be smoothed, but from what I see, this doesn't look like it's going to be smoothed out like that. So this could just be completely cut free of this main circle and just made as an intersection. You could easily get rid of three, maybe kind of a third, 2/3 of these loops in here. I believe this may be leading into a quad here, but again, with just getting rid of some of these loops or just moving them around, you can make this a lot tidier and keep the same density. That's the only thing pretty much in this shot which really stands out to me. Everything else looks fairly nice and clean. Perhaps there's a reason behind why the door has been modeled like that. I'd have to probably speak to the artist and understand what his reasoning was, but certainly all these points kind of come into a floating space here, or this really high density edge. There's a lot of wasted potential going on in there, and if it is for a game, there's a lot of detail going into a place where there doesn't need to be that much detail. But it is just me being picky. As I'm saying, I'm a VFX modeler, not a games modeler, so I'll look at things in a slightly different way. But overall, a very nice scene. It's quite clever the way it's been built as well, that you can build perhaps one asset here, so you'll have one map which will be shared across all the various ones, so it'll be good for maintaining scene density and things like those. So yeah, overall, a really nice model. So for our next piece here, we're going to look at this chair here. So it's the Ada Slytherin from Harry Potter. Now this looks like a really nice model. When I'm immediately looking at it, there's nothing particularly odd that my eye is immediately drawn to. Perhaps this cut in the front of the chair there does stand out slightly, but it's a very small element, so overall it looks like a nice piece. It's a nice composition, nicely balanced in the middle. I'm glad that it's just a simple kind of grey, slightly matted texture on it. It allows me to just quickly read the model without being distracted by textures or reflections or environments, which from a point of view of what I look for is perfect. Yes, it's nice. We can zoom in here and get some closer looks. Now it looks to me, perhaps there's a wireframe further on here, I'm not entirely sure, but from immediate first look, I can see that this is what looks to be fairly simple base meshes. They've been sculpted up in by Zbrush, I would guess, and they've been brought back into I think it's Maya that Ross uses. Let's have a look here. Yeah, it is Maya, and they're then brought back into Maya with displacement maps. You can tell slightly that it's not been fully retopologized. It's something that we'll be able to pick up on quite quickly, because you have these very soft edges. You can see it's almost like a straight squiggle. It's up to you entirely how you go about it. But as a general best practice, whenever you create something in a sculpt, you should go back through and retopologize it. For what we're doing in films, we retopologize to a level, but we also work with densities which sometimes you don't need to, because we have such high density meshes. We export them out at say level 2 or level 3, and we'll work on them from there rather than bringing them out at their base level and relying on the displacement maps. But this, when you're starting out, is not such a huge problem, because not everybody has a super strong PC at home, and normally bringing out these really dense meshes can cause a lot of issues with that. But overall it does look quite nice. It's nice and clean. I'm not seeing any mad crazy flat spots or bent spots you can sometimes get when somebody's tried to brush something in. You get these weird lumps. It looks fairly nice and clean. The curvature has been kept in the helmet. I'm not entirely sure if this is the correct size. I'm not familiar with Harry Potter, so I don't really know, but just from point of view, it looks like this is just slightly overstretching, but that's just super picky. It doesn't look wrong with a material on there. You probably wouldn't even notice. We're coming down here. Yeah, let's continue along the nice things. Now, I believe, I may be wrong on this, but this chair should have a leather effect on it, and to me this looks more like a sponge material. There are some nice leather presets. If you go in, you can quickly get them on the Pixology website for free. Even if you're not using Zbrush, you can use them for other programs. Or if you go into, I believe it's the Surface tab inside of Zbrush, you can add surface noise. There's one in there for the noise plugins. There's various ones in there. You can get like some Granite Effects, some really nice skin effects, and I believe there is a leather one in there. Just what you want is just some cracks and some things like that, even just like a cellular texture on top. But again, this is me being quite picky. There's more than likely this could be a fabric chair. This would be something which would be discussed at the point of interview to try and understand why that was the way it is. But as from a modelling point of view, when we do a sculpt, we're in charge of creating the sculpts and the displacement maps, so we have to sell the material, not just the model. I really like these candles down here. I've had to model and sculpt a few candles myself before, and I know it can be a bit of a pain in the bum to do it. I think there is quite a lot of repetition in there, but there's a nice, just nice simple thing of a couple of them have been rotated and shrunk. It looks like rather than them just being pushed down or uniformly shrunk, I think they have actually been kind of modelled properly as is needed, so that's nice to see. The skulls are kind of a funky touch. They're positioned nicely so it doesn't look like there's too much repetition. I know they're the same model just repeated, but it's clear enough that there is some change in it. Yeah, overall looks quite interesting. This, perhaps for the purpose of display, is slightly overly shiny. I'm finding it quite hard to understand what's reading in the face there, and you're getting quite a really high reflection of an HDR map in the eyes there. Yeah, that would be something perhaps I would slightly change, but otherwise it's a really nice looking sculpt. It looks to me, I'm not sure because I can't see in full density, that if this could do with just a little bit more love, just something really quick to do, rather than having these stitches sculpt, because I can see there's these stitches coming across this kind of cut in the chair, but it looks like this cut goes through the stitches, whereas it would be the cut below the stitches on top. It could simply be just smooth these out and add in just a semicircle. It doesn't have to be a high density model, just something that reads and sells better, and a really easy fix. It's not something that would lose you the job application. On the back there's a few kind of odd things happening in here, but I imagine from the way that this chair is placed and presented, these are things that are not really going to be seen, so it might not be too much of an issue. Looks perhaps these are a bit odd. It might be a procedural material, but again, if it's going to be hidden, it's not too much of a worry. It might be worth in presentation renders, if you have areas like this that are not going to be seen and you've not given them as much time and effort as the other areas, it's not worth showing them off. We don't want to hide and lie about our work, but we want to show only our best stuff. and I'm not sure what it is about this, but there's something very odd in here, so I would probably not show the rear of these chairs. It's nice to have this close-up view here. You can see, yeah, I think this is just the general surface noise in Zbrush here. I quite recognize that pattern, and I can see there's some faceting in here, so it's not been entirely smoothed. So this could certainly benefit from a nice smoothing. It's nice to see the surface noise on the actual thing here. Maybe perhaps slightly uniform, but it's giving me that immediate selling of what the material is meant to be and how it's meant to look. As I said, in the stitching now, you can see this cut comes through the middle of them rather than the stitches going over. It's a very easy fix. And you can see even more profound there. Overall, I mean, it looks fantastic. The metal is really nice. There's some nice displacements. Perhaps a wee bit of faceting in these, but that's being super picky. The only thing that I would question them on is what was the material of the actual seating meant to be, because I'm unable to figure out what it is, and I think it may, I don't know if it's just a render, but it looks like there might be a UV seam cutting across here. It's not something, again, that would lose you. It's a very minor thing, but these are just things that when you get a job, like we will in a VFX house, we'll have dailies every day when your things will be reviewed by the CG supervisors, and they will notice all these small details. So when I'm doing these reviews, if it sounds like I'm being overly picky or perhaps just finding things for the sake of it, most of these things are really good. They're good models. People are doing great work. It's just simply I'm treating these in the way that my work is treated at work and everyone else. These are how your things will be reviewed. In your first job, no one's expecting you to be absolutely amazing and have everything nailed and have zero mistakes. We know all about it. We've all been through it. It's just simply giving you pointers of what you should be thinking about and what you can start building into your workflow so that you can improve for the future. So I'm going to just finish up in this one here. There are two nice mirrors. Now this is a really nice mirror. This one to me sells a lot nicer than the chair with the gold material. It certainly helps. With the clay render here, again, it's really nice. It's nice to see you got a nice big ZBrush logo in the corner, so I know exactly what software is used. This is really nice when you've got this reflective one here, and then we go into just a flat grey one, so I can fully read what the model is. It's nice, it's clean, there's nothing overly jumping out. These flowers are slightly odd, but perhaps the metal is being cast, so you will get these in more obscure shapes. It's entirely down to what the reference is and the purpose of the model. The candles, just material wise, they look fine as a model, perhaps slightly dirty. It looks like it's quite a procedural texture on top of here, so could do with just a little bit of a hand roughening up, but I mean it sells fine. It would just be some subsurface scattering. Just there should be a little bit of translucency to wax just to sell the material. If you're going to be coming at and making like actual materials for things, even if it's low density, you need to be able to sell the feeling of material. I believe the metal, the mirror I get, the wax, so it looks plastic, it doesn't look wax. It's just a simple subsurface, and it will massively increase that. And again, it's another sculpture in here. There's not a lot on this one. This is one which I would probably remove from my portfolio, because you have the artist here, Ross, has much stronger work, and when we review portfolios, it's normally your weakest piece of work is what we will base our opinion of you on. So for me, this one compared to his other one is not as strong, so I would probably take this out myself, but again, it's artist's choice. These are just tips and advice, overall feedback on how we review portfolios. Just having a further look through the portfolio there, I hadn't realised there was another version of the chair on there, so in scrolling through it I can see that some work has been done to improve this. You can see there's a lot less, the creasing is a lot nicer. I'm getting a material feel from this. I'm able to slightly understand what the thing actually is. So on a portfolio point of view, this is actually really nice to see. I can look at progress, and I can see that the artist has self-identified issues in their models and has gone in and fixed them. It's got a nice creasing. I'm starting to feel the material. Yeah, it looks like there's some kind of puckering and pulling at the back there, which gives you a nice impression of it, perhaps in a velvet or something. I'm still slightly not sold on the general overall noise feeling to it, but that's something that a high level or high frequency bump could easily fix. And I believe in the final render down here, it's got this kind of nice crushed velvet feeling to it, which is really nice. I'm not sure if that displacement, this kind of rough displacement, still on there. It's quite hard to read, but the final result, it looks really nice. I'm getting that crushed velvet feeling, and getting the nice Fresnel effect. It's yeah, it certainly looks great. It's really nice to see the improvement from that first one that we looked at up into this one. All the criticisms I had, they've been fixed. The only thing is this the stitching thing still here, but there could be a story behind that. That could be a selling point. It adds some interest to the chair. It doesn't stand out as anything immediately odd. It's just me being picky, but yeah, certainly a massive improvement. This one I would put at the top of those sculpts rather than having all your other ones first. Have this as your first, like, wow, your selling image. Yeah, and that would certainly be fantastic. This is, yeah, it's really nice to see. So it's great to review those that work today, and this is the first video, so I'm still working on the format. What I'll do is below I'll share links to all the artists, all their social media, so you can go and check them out. If you've got any comments or criticisms, I would love to hear them so that I can further advance and improve these videos in general. If you'd like to get in touch and have any of your work featured, or like to have me review any of your work, drop me a message, leave me a comment. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I would love to feature your work, and not only will it help you improve your work, but also through sharing these you will gain much more exposure to not just random people on Facebook, but people who are interested in the industry, as well as people I work with. So well-established artists, you'll be exposed to them, and it could be that one day from being seen on here or being seen your work, that you could be somebody who gets picked out for a job. So if you just go ahead and like or dislike the video appropriately to give me an idea of how this thing went as a first run, subscribe to the channel if you would like to see any future videos. And yeah, I look forward to hearing from anybody who'd like to be involved in this. And hopefully through this we can help a lot of artists break out of their bedrooms and come and join us in the industry. It's always great to have new creative people, and I'd love to be part of helping your journey. So thanks for watching.